Okay guys, I'm back. So we're gonna see the second part of money and banking, and now we're gonna look at banking and the supply of money. Okay, you need to know that a bank is a business like any other bank, any other business. Okay, like any other. Its aim is to make profit. Aim, does it take an E? Amy? Okay, its goal, You see, when you don't know how to write something, you change. That's my trick. Okay, the goal of any business, a for-profit business, is to make profit. Okay, so a commercial bank, the banks that you see, BMCE, BMCE, all the banks that, except for Bank al-Maghrib, they actually provide a service and then you pay them for the service. And they try to make profit out of it, which is normal. Okay, now earlier in the other video, I told you that the goldsmiths are the bank ancestors. Okay, let's see how this worked. Okay, remember, goldsmiths, there were a lot of thefts. So people would take their money, their gold, their valuables, and put them with the goldsmith for safekeeping. That was phase one. So they used to simply take your valuables and store them for you. Of course, against a fee. They had to be paid for the service. So they used to store valuables for safekeeping. Phase one. Then they noticed something. Okay, with time they noticed that people wouldn't come all at the same time to take back their valuables. One would come today, another one would come 3 days from now, etc. So people won't come asking for their gold at the same time. Keep it in mind. And then they noticed also, you have an amount, you deposited an amount of gold with me. I'm the goldsmith. When you come, you don't care if I give you your own gold or somebody else's gold, as long as it's the same value, the same weight. Okay, that's good to know. So not everybody would come to take their money at the same time, and they wouldn't care if you give them back their own money or somebody else's money, as long as it's the same value. Cling, cling, then it hit them. Phase 3. Okay, let's keep a reserve of gold within the warehouse for safekeeping. Well, now it's a reserve. And then the rest, we can invest it and make money out of it. For example, I can lend it to somebody and ask them to pay me interest. And then when the person to whom the gold belongs, when they come, I have the reserve to give them whatever they want, as they wouldn't come all of them at the same time. Okay? So keep a reserve of gold to meet the demand, and then invest the rest to make profits. You know what this is? This is exactly the banking system. So these are the ancestors, the goldsmiths are the ones who created the banking system that you know right now, which is you deposit with the bank, but the bank is going to keep a reserve to meet the demand for money and invest the rest, okay, to gain profits. Okay, financial institutions, they are required by law. Now, it's not just an idea. They are required by law and Federal Reserve regulation. What's the Federal Reserve? Remember, central banks? Okay, by Federal Reserve regulations to keep a fraction of their deposits as reserves. Okay? Cash or deposits within the Federal Reserve. Okay? So, this is called the required reserve ratio. Each and every bank, by law, has to keep a fraction, a required reserve ratio That's the fraction that they have to keep in order to meet the demand, and the rest they can invest it. Okay? Take a screenshot, and I'm moving on. Unfortunately, I can't write all the things in this little board. So where am I? Yes, this is done. Now we're going to talk about deposit creation. Remember the required reserve ratio. Okay? Done? Let's move on. Now, I'm going to delete all this and go to deposit creation. I don't know why it has this title. It's what it creates. Deposit creation. Taken from the book, but that's not really what it's meant. Okay, what is meant? I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself as usual when I have something bugging me. Let's do this. So deposit creation, I'm gonna take first I need to know the required reserve ratio. I'm gonna call it RRR just for me. Okay, and you need to know that we are in a system where it goes from a bank to a bank. Okay, I'm gonna explain this. Imagine I deposit money in a bank. Okay, so that bank is gonna keep a required reserve ratio and lend this money to the rest to somebody else. That somebody else is going to do something with it, but it's going to be deposited again in another bank. Okay? And then the bank is going to get a required reserve ratio, and it's going to deposit, that money is going to go ultimately to another bank. Okay? Meaning, do you know my grandma? I talk about her a lot in my courses. She's an angel. Okay, my grandma, when she gets money, do you think she deposits it in a bank? No, my grandma takes that money and keeps it. No way it's getting out. Okay? Which means it gets out of the banking system. So it's that the thing we're gonna study here is not gonna be applied for that kind of people. So we're gonna assume that all the money is gonna stay within that banking system, which is usually the case. Okay? And more in Morocco now, we're following that system. You don't keep your money in your house anymore. You deposit it, and then you go with your debit card or checking account. That's the way it works. Okay, moving on. So I wanted to do this, and we're gonna have an initial deposit. That's just for the example. Well, I'm gonna write it here. Initial deposit. And I'm gonna give it, so the change in the deposit is equal, deposit here, not demand, okay? Deposit, I'm gonna give it $1,000, okay? And I'm gonna take the required reserve ratio as being 90%. Okay. RRR is equal to 90%. That means 9/10. And let's see how it works. So I have bank 1. Bank 2. Bank 3. This is just for explanation, because we don't care if it goes back to bank 1 or bank 2, it's the same system. I'm gonna stop at bank 4, but you know that there are many other banks, or coming back to the same bank, it's the same system. Okay, so let's see how it works. So I got, not percent here, it's dollars. I got from whatever a payment of $1,000. What am I gonna do with it? The payment is automatically gonna go to the bank, then I can withdraw money from my account. So deposited with, that's the delta, $1,000. What is bank 1 gonna do with it? Remember, by law, it has to keep $9/10, so 90% of that money needs to stay in the required reserve ratio, okay? In the reserves. So 9/10 of the 1,000 is gonna stay as reserves within the bank. Reserve. Sorry for the writing. And 1/10 of the 1,000 is gonna go out. Out meaning it's gonna be lended to somebody else. Okay, that person who receives the 1/10 times 1,000, ultimately that person is gonna deposit it with the bank. It can be the same bank or another bank, we don't care. So this money is gonna come here. So how much did this bank receive? This bank received 1/10 times 1,000. Okay? What is this bank gonna do with it? It's gonna keep 9/10 of 1/10 of 1,000 in its reserve. We don't care for this. But how much is it gonna get out, which is money creation, okay? It's gonna get out, so it received 1/10 times 1,000, and it's gonna multiply it by 1/10, okay? Because from whatever it receives, it gives 9/10 to the reserve, and it keeps 1/10. So 1/10, let me do it this way. So here it's gonna get out 1/10 of whatever money it receives. It lends it again. Okay, it lends it to somebody. What is that person gonna do with it? Again, deposit it into another bank. So this bank received 1/10 times 1/10 times the deposit. So 1/10, that's how much it received, times 1/10 times the deposit of 1,000. That's received as a deposit. What is it gonna do with it? 9/10 times whatever it received, which is 1/10 times 1/10 times 1,000. This is gonna go to reserve. And the rest, 1/10 over it, is gonna, from this amount, is gonna go out again. So 1/10 times 1/10 times whatever it received, which is 1/10 times 1/10 times 1,000, is gonna go out. And you continue from bank to bank to bank to bank to bank to bank to bank, n times. Okay? So you see how much money was created due to $1,000. Okay? It reminds you of something that is the money multiplier now. It's similar to the multipliers we have seen before. Okay? So let's see how it goes. I can delete. So here, let me just see. much did I put 10%. Anyway, here how much is it gonna increase? In my example, I put 10% required reserve ratio, and in this one, I put 9/10. So I'm gonna redo the calculations, I don't care. So here it's it's delta deposit. I'm gonna write it here, then do the thing. Plus 1/10 times delta deposit, plus 1/10 square. Here it was 1/10. It was the deposit itself, plus 1/10 times the deposit, plus 1/10 square times the deposit, delta deposit, plus 1/10 to the cube times the deposit, plus 1/10 to the power n times the delta deposit. Okay, you get this one? Now I need to delete all this in order to see how much money I'm gonna create. Okay? Can I? Done. So I'm gonna keep this one because I'm gonna need to rewrite it. Okay, so delta deposit, that's the change in the money supply that is going to be due to that initial deposit. So here it's 1,000 plus, what is 1/10? 1/10, it's what's left, isn't it? It's 1 minus 9/10, isn't it? Here, 9/10 is going to stay, so 1 minus 9/10 is equal to 1/10 that I have here, okay? So plus 1 minus required reserve ratio. So what am I going to do here? Times delta deposit. So here it's 1/10 times 1,000. I'm just rewriting this one here, okay? Plus 1 minus RRR square times delta deposit, which is here. So 1/10 square times the $1,000 plus, I'm continuing, 1 minus RRR to the cube times delta deposit, which is here, 1/10 to the cube times delta D times 1,000 plus 1 minus RRR to the power n times delta deposit, which is my $1,000, power n times delta D. Okay, take this one, take a screenshot, and now I'm gonna start. I'm gonna put my little thingy into I have exactly the country in my example. Can I continue with my thingy here? I'm gonna put delta D in common, so delta deposit times 1 plus 1 minus RRR plus 1 minus RRR square plus 1 minus 1 minus RRR to the cube plus 1 minus RR plus 1 minus r to the power n, and this here is your money multiplier. Of course, we're gonna do it like we did with the other multipliers, money multiplier. Okay, remember what we did last time? So I'm not gonna go through the math because it's exactly the same thing. Remember that 1 minus r is gonna be between 0 and 1. That's why I can do what I'm gonna do right now. So delta money supply is delta G times 1 over 1 minus r. Okay? Do you remember with the MPC, it was equal to 1 over 1 minus MPC? Well, here it's not MPC, it's 1 minus MPC. If you think about it, just for the math here, so that I show you the math. So this one is going to be equivalent to this one. I'm not talking about MPC here, it's just for the math. So 1 over 1 minus, between parentheses, 1 minus r, which is going to give you delta D times 1 over 1 minus 1 plus r. Okay, it's when you open the parentheses. It's going to give you delta D times 1 over 1 minus 1, 0, so it becomes r. And that is your money multiplier. Okay, guys? Now, let me see with my example how much it's going to give me. So, the calculations I've done are not good because I reversed my example. So now I'm going to do new calculations. So I have delta deposit, it's 1,000. So delta money supply is equal to delta D times 1 over r. So 1 over r in this case is going to be equal to 1 over 100. Calculation, Amy. I think it's going to be 90? Nah, 9. Let me check. So I'm going to calculate 1 over r first. Money multiplier is equal to 1 over 9 over 10. It's going to be equal to 10 over 9. 10 over 9. Not exactly the example I had. So for 1,000, 10 over 9 is not very good for my example. Anyway, so delta money supply is equal to 1,000 delta deposit times money multiplier. I hope you see what I'm doing. Times money multiplier, which is equal to 1,000 times 10 over 9. I hate this multiplier. 10 over 9. It's not going to give me a good result. In my previous example, the one I have on paper, it was 10 exactly. Unfortunately, I did the reverse. Okay, calculation. Come on, calculator. Calendar. Why did I go to the calendar? Bear with me, guys. Calculator. Calendar again. Calculator. Oof. So 10,000 divided by 9. I don't like this. Yeah. It's gonna change by 1,111. I don't like it. 1,111.111111. Sorry. Okay, guys, I think you got the points. Now I'm gonna move to how I can change the money supply. Okay, this is done. Moving on. So this question, I hope you took notes or you took a screenshot. Change in money supply. I don't have it here, but I'm going to put it. Change in money or monetary policy. Monetary policy. I'm not taking a title from the book. I'm just showing how we can influence the money supply. And this question, I remember in the introduction to the course, a person asked me, okay, we talked about monetary policy, and I said, when you increase the money supply, this is what's going to happen. When you decrease the money supply, this is what's going to happen. And then somebody, and you all know who, asked me, but how do we increase or decrease the money supply? I'm like, this is the introduction. I cannot teach you that right now. Okay, this is where we're gonna see that. Finally, you get your answer, dear student, and you know who you are. Okay, good question though, but I couldn't answer because we were in chapter 1. Right now we are in the one before last. So, okay, so how do we affect the money supply? We just saw that the required reserve ratio actually influences the money supply. So first thing we're going to see is first required reserve ratio. Okay, remember the required reserve ratio, it's what you need to keep within the bank. So just logically, this is the money we have in the bank. If the required reserve is here, let's imagine that this is your RRR. If you increase it, so this you can let out. If you increase the required reserve ratio, what's going to happen? That means a bigger part has to stay within the bank, isn't it? This is your RRR now. So the money you're letting out is smaller, so you decrease the money supply. So when you increase the required reserve ratio, increase required reserve ratio, you decrease the money supply. Okay? I'm going to give you numerical examples in 2 seconds. So the contrary is correct. If I decrease the required reserve ratio, decrease it, that means I'm here, so more money can go out. So I increase the money supply. You get it? So a decrease in the required reserve ratio, I'm going to put it here, decrease in the required reserve ratio, what is it going to give me? It's going to increase the money supply. Okay, let's try with numbers. Now I'm going to use my example, the one I didn't use earlier. Okay, my required reserve ratio is 10%. Okay? Initial deposit still 1,000. Okay? Delta deposit is equal to 1,000. Let's calculate the situation right now. Okay? So right now, the change in the money supply is going to be equal to the change in the deposit times 1 over the required reserve ratio, which is the money multiplier. So money multiplier, I'm going to calculate it first, is equal to 1 over 10. 10% is 1 over 10. Okay? So the money multiplier is equal to 10. That's the example I had. Now, delta money supply is equal to 1,000 times 10. So delta money supply is equal to 10,000. Okay, that's what I have. That's the initial situation. Okay? Now let's increase the required reserve ratio to 20%. Increase required reserve, no. When I increased it, I put it in. I'm gonna put everything in black. Okay. Increase required reserve ratio. Now it's gonna become 20%. Okay? So what's gonna happen? 20%, my money multiplier. What do I have here? It's going to become 20. One over 10 is going to be 20. Oh, no, c'est bon. I had a huge problem. Okay. Excuse me, I'm tired. Okay. No, it's going to become 5. Okay. So the required reserve ratio 20%. So the money multiplier, I'm making calculations and having mistakes in my head. So money multiplier is equal to 1 over 20 over 100. That's where I had my mistake. So it's equal to 100 over 20. Money, I'm gonna write it here. This one is equal to 100 over 20. 100 over 20 is equal to 5. That's where I was. Anyway, I'm going to stop saying that. So delta MS is going to be equal to the 1,000, still the same deposit, times 5. So it's going to change only by 5,000. See? Where an initial deposit earlier gave you 10,000, the same initial deposit of 1,000, now it's going to give you only 5,000. Okay? So when you increase the required reserve ratio, you decrease the change in the money supply. So you decrease the effect that it has. Before it had an effect of 10,000 increase, now it has an effect of only 5,000 increase. Okay? Now, if you decrease the required reserve ratio, I'm going to move to decreasing it. That means, what do I put? 1%? 1%, it's going to give me, how much? 100 over, what did I put in my other? 5%. 5%, yes, in my other example. Okay, decrease RRR to 5%. Okay, so the money multiplier is going to be equal to 1 over 5 over 100, which is going to be 100 over 5. 100 over 5, that's 20, isn't it? 20, 20, 20. Okay, so your money multiplier is increasing. If you increase the money multiplier, automatically you're going to increase the delta MS. So delta money supply, still the same deposit and seeing its effect. So now it's going to be 1,000 times 20, and it's going to give you 20,000 change in the money supply. You see how it increased. Okay, take a screenshot because I need to move on. This is not the only way we can influence the money supply. Okay, how am I doing with, oh, this is gonna be long, but I need to finish this one. The last one was short. Cool, we did it. Finally, I succeeded in doing it. I hope I have no mistakes. Let's move on. So first, we have seen increasing or decreasing the required reserve ratio. Increase required reserve ratio, decrease money supply. That's it. The reverse is correct. The second one is the discount rate. Discount rate. Okay, the discount rate. It is called the discount rate. Please, Amy, please, please, please. I didn't write it here. Very good, Amy. Didn't write it in my summary. Anyway, the discount rate is simply when a bank wants to borrow money from the federal bank. Okay? So commercial banks, it's the interest rate paid by commercial banks. Interest rate paid by commercial banks when borrowing money. Okay? Borrowing money. Okay. So you're a bank, BMC. You want to borrow money. From where are you going to borrow money? From Bank al-Maghrib, from the central bank. So the central bank, that is not going to give you money just like that. It's going to tell you, okay, you want it, pay an interest rate, which is called the discount rate. Okay? Now, if the discount rate, I'm going to write DR just to not waste my time. So if the discount rate increases, are you going to borrow as much money? So you're paying more. The price increases, so you borrow less. The banks are going to borrow less. If they borrow less, they're not going to get as much money out, so the money supply would tighten, decrease. Okay? Now, if you want actually to increase the money supply, you decrease the discount rate. So you decrease the price of money for these banks, so they're going to borrow more. If they borrow more, they're going to create more money. So the money supply is going to increase. So you decrease. If you want to increase the money supply, what do? Decrease the required reserve ratio, decrease the discount rate, which is the interest rate paid by banks, and here you have an increase in the money supply. If you want to decrease the money supply, too much money turning around, inflation is going up, what are you going to do? You're going to increase the required reserve ratio so that banks don't have a lot of money to get out, and you're going to increase the discount rate. You're going to tell them, okay, if you want to borrow money from me, you're going to pay a high price. This way they don't borrow as much and they cannot get money out. So you're decreasing the money supply. There is another one, another way. So here I'm going to just, because I need the space, so you increase the discount rate you decrease the money supply. Moving on. 3. So in this one, I need to cheat because I can never remember. It's FOMC, Free Open Market Committee. Yes, that decides on selling treasury bonds, okay? FOMC operations. And that's within the Federal Reserve. FOMC operations, okay. Federal Reserve Open Market, Federal Reserve, that's the committee that decides on Federal Reserve Committee operations. I already Federal Reserve Open Market Committee. Okay, this committee decides on the operations of the Federal Reserve, and it's responsible for selling or buying treasury bonds. Let me controlling the money supply. I'm cheating here. Discount rate. Yeah, did that. Hello, where is it? US government securities. Okay. So it decides on increasing the money supply or decreasing the money supply, and it gives the securities. Okay. These securities are the most secure investment you can have. Most secure in the world. In investment in the world. According to your book. Okay, and according to Encarta, which is where I got these data from. Okay, so in Morocco, we have seen them from time to time, treasury bonds, okay? You want people not to get, to have that much money in the market because inflation is going too high or for whatever reason. Okay, what are you going to propose? Okay, come buy treasury bonds. Okay, they buy it from you. When they buy treasury bonds, you take the money, you give them the treasury bond. So the money supply decreases. Okay? So you're selling treasury bonds, they're buying it, you keep the money, it's not in the market. And then if you want to increase the money supply, you tell them, okay, hey, come back, come take your money, I'm buying back my treasury bonds. Simple. You give them a piece of paper when you want the money supply to decrease, and then you take back your piece of paper when you want the money supply to increase. So, money supply, you want it to decrease. What do? You sell, I'm going to call it treasury bonds, even though they say it's federal securities. I guess treasury bonds are the ones they're talking about. I'm just not sure if it's the Fed that's responsible. Anyway, treasury bonds. Okay, you want the money supply to decrease? Sell treasury bonds. That means people get a piece of paper and you take the money. It's not in circulation anymore. And then if you want the money supply to increase, you buy back. This, I'm talking here about the government, okay? Fed government, buy the treasury bonds. Okay, here people are gonna buy. People are buying. And in this one, people are selling back. Okay, guys? So, here are 3 ways we can influence the money supply. Okay, central banks have 3 ways to influence the money supply whenever they need to, in order to loosen the money supply or tighten the money supply. The effects of these monetary policies, we have seen them in chapter 1. Okay, I think I'm done here. There is something else that you need to read, but that's your reading. I'm not gonna do it. It's the Federal Reserve. Federal Reserve System. Gaia. And I need you to read the structure. Gaia, tu arrêtes. Structure. I need to stop right now. There is too much noise in here. Structure. Okay? It's very easy. You're gonna, it's theory, so just reading. I'm insisting on when they are voted. Actually, we're trying to not have the same people all the time. So these ones are voted for this amount of years. These ones are gonna kind of be voted to get in before and in the middle get out. You're gonna see this in your reading. Anyway, I'm done with this chapter. Now I'm gonna do after that I'm gonna do chapter 27, depending on the book. Actually, it might be 25 in another book. It's economic growth. I'm gonna cover the first part, which needs some explanations, and then you're gonna cover the rest, which is more about the trends, some reading to do. Okay, love you guys. I hope you understood all this. I find it kind of easy, but up to you. If you have any question, you have my phone number. You call, you WhatsApp, you know the drill. Love you guys. Bye-bye.